Thank you, Paul, and great pleasure to be here at Retail Risk London, a very important industry event. In the next 20 minutes, we will go through a data-rich view in terms of COVID-19, the impact of retail, and what does the industry look like going forward. This presentation that I've updated over the last 5 to 10 years is called a Disruptive Future of Retail. Today we'll speak about an abbreviated version of what does it look like in post-COVID-19. The full edition, which I've delivered on many stages around the world, goes deep into the size and shape of the industry, key industry trends, retail shrink if it's a loss prevention audience, the new normal, and what does the future of retail looks like. Let me start by looking at, for this edition, in terms of worldwide growth and where we're at in terms of gross domestic product. As you can see in the latest revised forecast, 21-21 is expected to be a very robust year with growth worldwide of 5.9%. In the latest revisions in Q2, the only sector or part of the world that is down is the Eurozone, which is expected to have 4% growth, which is half of what will take place, for example, in China, which has more than 8% growth projected in this year. COVID-19 really had a major disruptive effect on transfer of wealth from sectors of retail. In North America, $125 billion was transferred from general merchandise and hospitality to food, drug, mass merch, and convenience. Worldwide, that number was $285 billion. Severely impacted were also small companies by COVID-19. In North America, for example, there was a wealth transfer of $250 billion for small companies to large companies. Why is that? Well, small companies were the most severely impacted by the pandemic. The U.S. saw an estimated store closures of over 440,000 stores during the height of COVID. You can see the smallest chain being the most severely impacted. Larger chains were also impacted with nearly 25,000 stores closed with the chains with 1,000 stores or more. But again, the smaller chains took the majority of the brunt. When retailers were asked to describe 2020, the key word that came to mind was chaotic, challenging, adapting. So a very, very tough year for retail. Now, the USA does have a challenge. In fact, pre-COVID-19 in the US, we were talking about the retail apocalypse and the end of physical stores. The reason for that is that the US is indeed overstored, as you can see by this chart, in terms of sales space per capita, followed by Australia. And we were already going through a resizing that was accelerated by COVID-19. The other questions that I get asked a lot is, are we all going to be shopping just online and no longer going to physical stores? And the answer to that is no. COVID-19 did accelerate the shopping online, and in fact, McKinsey estimates that in the peak, by 10 years, we were shopping online much more aggressively than we were in the past. But as you can see from the chart on the right, that spike in 2020, which was nearly 28% of change in terms of shopping online, is declining, and by 2024, 22% of e-commerce will be total retail sales, but 80% will still be, nearly 80% will still be in physical stores. By no means stores are dying. Why? Well, this chart answers that question. The reason for that is that as social beings, we love the social interaction of stores. This is actually a survey done in 2020, and as you can see, in France and the UK especially, over 80% of consumers miss that social interaction. Just as important, that online experience is still not optimized. Really, buying online is not the perfect kind of shopping experience that you can still deliver in physical stores. Having said this, there are brand new services that have emerged, such as buy online, pick up in stores, collect orders from inside the stores, and return items that were bought online to stores. Consumers are loving those services, and they're here to stay. So you will see an increase of these digitally supported services going forward. You will also see the physical stores expand from inside the store to the parking lot as another location where shopping will take place. The dirty secret is all that adds cost, and that's something that retailers will need to optimize. Let's look now at the impact of COVID-19 in terms of worldwide retail. This chart summarizes the dramatic drop that restaurants, department stores, especially hard goods and especially soft goods, had during the pandemic, and also the spike that food, drug, convenience, and mass merchandise had during the same pandemic. As you can see on this chart, we don't recover in restaurants worldwide until the middle of 2022, and roughly for department stores and especially hard goods and especially soft goods until the first quarter of 2022. And the spike that took place in food and drug is abating, but that sector is actually staying positive. The US, in fact, is strongly recovering. We are well past the dip that happened during COVID-19, back to strong growth. In fact, the National Retail Federation projects that in this year, in 2021, we will have the best year in retail since 1984. All sectors are actually recovering, as you can see on the right. And my favorite part of this slide is the most severely impacted sector, which is especially soft goods, which includes apparel, had the strongest growth in this chart for April 2021. So great news in terms of key impactor sectors coming back. For Europe, a similar storyline in terms of a spike in food, drug, convenience, and mass merchandise sales, and a decline in department stores, especially hard goods and especially soft goods, and an even more severe decline in restaurants. And as you can see on this chart, restaurants don't recover until 2023, and the department stores, especially hard goods and especially soft goods, recover somewhere in the middle of 2022, just to 2019 levels. The good news, when retailers were asked to describe 2021 with one word, the one word that they came up with was recovering, followed by adapting and hopeful. So it tells you that the industry is indeed coming back in 2021. For this audience, I also wanted to bring you the latest shrink data that is available in the United States. As you can see, it's now $62 billion in losses in the United States. It represents 1.62% of sales, which is up from 1.38% in the previous survey. The top three areas of concerns are organized retail crime, cybercrime, and e-commerce. Employees still steal a lot more than shoplifters, and you can see it's dramatic. And again, there is a typo on this chart. It should say FY19, which is when this study was done, and it was published in 2020. And the greatest fraud that actually increased was in multi-channel sales. So now looking at both all the different areas that people shop, how do you actually combat that fraud? Organized retail crime is indeed a major concern here in the United States. In the latest survey published in 2020, 719,548 per 1 billion in sales. That's how much it cost, and you can see it's up from the previous year in 2019. And what's disturbing, this is the 5th year in a row that this number has really topped $700,000. And it's up significantly from 2015 when it was roughly 450,000. Also very significant is that organized retail crime is also increasing, and I'm not showing it here, it's also getting more violent. Speaking to violence, there was a study published earlier this year in terms of 2020. One of the challenges that US faces is fatalities in stores. There were 523 fatalities in retail stores in 2020, which was up 5%, but you can see it's been a steady increase and up 40% since 2016. In terms of incidents, they are up 14% in 2020. 49% of the fatalities are customers, 24% are store associates, which was up 41% from the previous year. So substantial challenges with violence in retail in the United States. You can also see that parking lots is the major area where it takes place, followed closely by inside stores, and C-stores and restaurants lead where these fatalities take place. Now, one of the things that COVID-19 has done is really worsened or accelerated some of those pre-COVID-19 trends. Prior to COVID-19, we're already talking about the challenges of the department stores and apparels. That was accelerated by COVID-19. And really this chart summarizes some of those key trends. Amazon got stronger. Online groceries became a key area. As with aging population, a lot more focus on healthcare. We spend more time with pets, and we also try to take care of ourselves by buying more organic food. So you can see the end of the spectrum, how changes took place and who got substantially impacted. But ultimately, COVID-19 was an accelerator of trends that already were underway. One of the new trends that is very important for retail going forward is that safety is now a top 3 purchase driver. And that actually is important because that is not going to go away anytime soon. Consumers are still concerned about shopping inside stores and how safe they are in terms of the pandemic, because again, there are still issues in some parts of the world and some parts of the country. In terms of fundamental shifts that are taking place in consumer behavior, as you can see from this data from McKinsey, we are overall increasing our optimism that we're coming out of this, and we're coming out of this stronger. The recovery is taking place, and as I said earlier, in some markets faster than others as they're reopening. A lot of it is driven by vaccination, and going forward, you will see that digital will actually be a key part of the sectors going forward. So this digital transformation, digital accelerations, that's what with us is actually going to accelerate and be with us. And it's actually going to change how we engage with consumers and shoppers. But my favorite on this chart is actually the evolution of loyalty. Loyalty changed a little bit during the pandemic in the sense that a lot of consumers tried new brands because they were forced to, sometimes because of shortages, sometimes because of choice. So again, loyalty changed, and it's really going to be important for those brands to come back and focus on loyalty to get their consumers back into both physical and digital stores. Moving now in terms of what does retail look like and what are the forces that are driving retail forward. A key chart that I've kept and I've updated continuously is really the key drivers that are driving change, and that's really technology. The fact that we are connecting a lot more devices going forward, and connected devices generating data and creating intelligence is a key factor that is speeding up how consumers engage with brands. Mobility, smartphones, a key trend that is worldwide that's allowing countries to open up more of retail by, for example, shopping on just a smartphone. The pace of all this stuff is dramatically accelerating. So for example, with the chart on the right, you can see how long it took for technologies to reach 50 million users. You can see that for phones it took 75 years, but when we got to Pokemon Go, it was down to 19 days. So we've accelerated the pace in terms of some of this kind of activity, and that is not going to stop. You're going to see faster and faster change driven by technology. And in fact, COVID-19 has become a brutal accelerator of some of these trends. So you're going to see a lot more digitization around products and services, as you can see by this chart, much more data generated. Supply chains are being looked at because of all the shortages, and how do you improve that? The cloud, which was questioned, especially in retail in the early days, is now coming in strong. A lot more artificial intelligence, a lot more Internet of Things and connected devices. And yes, robots are also coming to a store near you. Another key important trend that COVID-19 has accelerated is really the arrival of frictionless commerce. It's the ability to actually engage with a store, sometimes without not even talking to a store associate. Amazon Go is a good example of that, and there's all kinds of variations of Amazon Go stores around the world. And you can see with the chart on the right that the cost of a lot of these technologies are actually declining substantially. There are some key technologies that are driving this frictionless commerce. They are computer vision, artificial intelligence, machine learning, smart shelves, and RFID. At the center of all these, and again, I talked a lot more about this in the other presentation, is actually getting into clear inventory visibility. Inventory visibility and accurate inventory is the most critical thing that retailers need to have going forward to be successful and be able to sell products both in physical stores and online. And that's going to get accelerated because, again, of all these digital devices coming together. This chart, for example, looks at all the sensors that are being brought into retail, and you can see the dramatic increase of all kinds of sensors, including RFID tags, which have substantial number of billions coming into the market. What they're addressing is $1.8 trillion in inventory distortion. And in fact, I recently published an article that showed that in the United States, the adoption rate of RFID is now at 93% split among different sections, such as piloting, implementing, and full adoption. In Europe, that is at 77%, with 8% piloting, 37% implementing, and 32% in full adoption. A key insight for this audience especially is what happens to loss prevention in the post-COVID-19 world. One of the nice factors of my career is I've watched both the information technology and also loss prevention, and it's been great to watch how key loss prevention technology are now evolving into being critical for the rest of the physical store. So EAS started out as an item level technology, is getting smarter, integrated. It's getting into RFID as EAS. Video, which again was initially designed to actually catch thieves and stop people from stealing, is now becoming a critical data gathering device, bringing a lot of intelligence in the store. So we will see this evolution from physical security to data intelligence to increasingly visual intelligence, and these technologies are going to become a critical role, not just for loss prevention, for the entire enterprise. And it's nice to see that loss prevention and asset protection had a role in this. Now, what happens as we get past COVID-19? To me, loss prevention actually gets to be a much more important function, but it needs to change. It needs to be a lot more supportive in terms of what the brand is trying to deliver to the consumer. It needs to actually integrate with the brand and provide solutions that are actually make it easier for the consumer to shop. And you're going to see new technologies emerge that actually deliver faster and greater insight in terms of what the loss prevention functions can do in terms of supporting the enterprise. Ultimately, I think this is one of those moments where loss prevention can get elevated almost to the C-suite in terms of providing key factors that the C-suite is looking for in terms of bridging that online and offline and actually allowing the consumers to engage with products much more aggressively. In closing, what does the store of the future look like? Everything is connected. The amount of data will grow substantially. Products themselves will be connected. All that data will go through intelligent filters, some of which you see on the slide. All those filters should be geared on creating immersive experiences targeted at that person in the middle, which is the consumer. The nirvana of retail is when a passionate consumer that loves a brand meets an equally passionate store associate that loves working in the store, both digitally empowered to have a conversations about products inside the physical store and online. Loss prevention remains a critical function across the retail enterprise, but it will be more covert, more intelligent, and more geared towards deterrence. Frictionless checkout will be all over the store, and there will be a seamless movement between clicks and bricks, online and in physical stores. 5 key strategies drive retail going forward. Harmonized retail channels, frictionless commerce, digitally empowered associates, the ability to have clear enterprise inventory visibility, and going more and more real-time analytics and engagement. 3 technologies for me surface to the top, and they are edge computing, the Internet of Things or connected devices, and computer vision, all geared to really what I said in the previous chart, immersive experiences and creating those brand ambassadors. That is a very profitable future of retail for the industry and loss prevention. And with that, I would like to say thank you, Paul, for inviting me to be here with you at RetailX London. I'm looking forward with all of you to creating a much brighter future of retail.